Man, got a bad bitch, big, she can look at bad. She ain't good, so maybe we get fed. I'm like, yeah, yes, sir. Any other place, someone call me driver. I'm flying, nigga, fuck.
Are you one? Are you two? Are you three? Are you four? Are you five? Are you six? Are you seven? Are you eight? 7. All right, yay!
In the early morning hours of April 12, 2025, what should have been an ordinary spring Saturday in Trenton, New Jersey, turned into a day the community would never forget. On the 300 block of West State Street, just blocks from the Capitol complex, 40-year-old Malika Whiting and her 13-year-old daughter Jairah Biggs were going about their morning routine. By 10:30 a.m., both would be dead, victims of a senseless act of violence that would leave a family shattered and a community in mourning. Police responded to a frantic 911 call reporting gunshots. What they discovered was devastating. Malika's body on the stairway leading to the 3rd floor, and Jairah in her 3rd-floor bedroom. Both had suffered multiple gunshot wounds and were pronounced dead at the scene, their lives cut short by what officials would later describe as a domestic violence incident of the most horrific kind. The man behind it all. Bahin Lynch, 45, Malika's ex-boyfriend. A relationship that had ended in March would lead to a violent explosion of rage that claimed not only Malika's life, but also that of her innocent daughter, who had nothing to do with the adult conflict. Malika Whiting was warm, generous, with a laugh that could fill a room. Born and raised in Trenton, she had built a life centered around family and service to others. At 40, she had established herself as a pillar of her community, known for her work ethic, devotion to her children, and seemingly limitless capacity to care for others. She was a loving mother. She worked every day. Even if she lost a job, she was never discouraged about finding another one the next day, recalled a colleague. She was funny. She was loving. All she wanted to do was to just have her kids raised properly. By day, Malika worked at Gabe Academy International School, where she was more than just a daycare provider. Parents trusted her implicitly, knowing their children would be nurtured and genuinely loved during their time with Ms. Malika. Her natural talent with children made her exceptional at her job, but Malika's nurturing didn't stop when she clocked out. Beyond her biological children, she had opened her heart and home as a foster parent, providing stability and love to children in need. It was a calling she took seriously. Malika's home on West State Street was modest, but always filled with warmth. The walls were covered with framed photos of her children, school awards, and artwork. Despite working full-time and caring for multiple children, Malika somehow found the energy to make every holiday special, every birthday memorable. Her social media pages told the story of a life dedicated to celebration. Easter egg hunts, elaborate birthday cakes, Christmas mornings with piles of carefully wrapped gifts, each post radiating the joy she found in making her children happy. She would stay up all night decorating for a birthday, even after working a full shift, her sister recalled. That was Malika. She'd run herself ragged, making sure everyone else felt special. At the center of Malika's world was her 13-year-old daughter, Jairah Biggs. A 7th grader at Trenton Public School District, Jairah was just beginning to find her way in the world, navigating the complicated terrain of early adolescence with the confidence that comes from being securely loved. With her mother's warm smile and a spirit all her own, Jairah was well liked by teachers and peers alike. Described as bright and kind, she was the kind of student teachers looked forward to having in their classroom. Her daughter's in the 7th grade, 13 years old. She didn't deserve this. To be in the middle of a conflict she had nothing to do with, said her homeroom teacher, fighting back tears in the days following the tragedy. Like many 13-year-olds, Jairah was finding her own identity. She loved music and art, spent hours creating TikTok videos with friends, and had recently developed an interest in basketball. The bond between Malika and Jairah was special. They shared not just a physical resemblance, but mannerisms, expressions, and a similar laugh that friends found uncanny. In early April 2025, Jairah had celebrated her 13th birthday, a milestone Malika had marked with a special party. Photos showed a beaming Jairah surrounded by friends, a custom cake and decorations that had clearly taken hours to arrange. Malika stood to the side in several photos, watching her daughter with evident pride. All she ever wanted was for her kids to be happy and have what she didn't, explained a family member. She went all out for Jairah turning 13, said it was a big deal becoming a teenager. None of them could have known it would be the last birthday they would celebrate together. In the Trenton community, the Whiting family was well known and respected. Malika's generosity extended beyond her immediate circle, whether it was organizing food drives through her church, mentoring young single mothers, or simply being the neighbor you could count on in a crisis. Even with her busy schedule, Malika found time to be involved in her children's education. She rarely missed a parent-teacher conference and volunteered for school events when her work schedule allowed. She was the kind of parent teachers dream of, said the principal of Jairah's school. Supportive, engaged, but never overstepping or making excuses. Perhaps what stood out most about Malika was her resilience. Life hadn't always been easy. Single motherhood, financial struggles, the challenges of fostering, but she faced each obstacle with determination and remarkable optimism. She never complained, a co-worker remembered. If she was going through something tough, you'd never know it from her attitude. She'd just say, "We all got our crosses to bear," and keep it moving. It was this strength that made what happened on April 12th all the more shocking. Malika had overcome so much and built a beautiful life for herself and her children. She had recently turned 40, celebrating what she called on social media a new chapter in her life. Looking forward to this decade, she had written beneath a photo of herself smiling beside a 40 and fabulous birthday cake. "Grateful for my babies, my health, and God's endless blessings. The best is yet to come." Just weeks later, Malika and Jairah would be gone, their lives extinguished by a man who couldn't accept that Malika's future plans no longer included him. A man who, when faced with rejection, responded with the ultimate act of control. There's a certain darkness that follows men like Bahin Lynch, the kind that doesn't show up right away, but rather seeps in slowly, almost imperceptibly, until it's too late to escape its shadow. At 45, Bahin Lynch seemed like a catch to those who didn't know him well. A steady job as a forklift operator, his own apartment, no obvious red flags. He carried himself with confidence, always well-dressed, always ready with a compliment or a helping hand. When he first entered Malika's life in early 2024, friends thought she might have finally found someone worthy of her. He was charming enough, the type who smiles at your kids, offers to help around the house, and plays the role of stepfather. Like he's auditioning for a second chance at life, recalled one family friend who witnessed the early days of their relationship. The couple met through mutual acquaintances at a community event. Lynch approached Malika with respect and genuine interest in her life and family. For Malika, who had focused primarily on her children and career, his attention was flattering. Here was a man who seemed to appreciate all she had built, who didn't see her children as baggage, but as an extension of the woman he claimed to admire. In those first months, Lynch integrated himself seamlessly into Malika's world. He showed up at Jairah's school events, brought groceries when Malika was working, late shifts, remembered birthdays and offered thoughtful gifts. He fixed things around the house, drove the kids to appointments when needed, and presented himself as the supportive partner Malika deserved. "At first I was happy for her," said Malika's sister. "She works so hard, taking care of everyone else. I thought, finally someone's taking care of her for a change. We all did." But as winter turned to spring and their relationship deepened, subtle shifts began to emerge. What had once seemed like attentiveness now felt like surveillance. His questions about her whereabouts became more frequent, more demanding. His offers to help began to feel less like support and more like control. He'd call her at work multiple times a day, remembered a co-worker at Gabe Academy. At first it seemed sweet checking in on her, but then you'd see her tense up when her phone rang. She'd step outside to take his calls, and when she came back, that smile of hers would be a little dimmer. Lynch's true nature revealed itself, in stages, like a mask slipping bit by bit. The first red flag came when he began isolating Malika from her support network, subtle criticisms of her friends, comments about her sister being in their business too much. suddenly having emergencies that required Malika to cancel plans with others. By summer 2024, friends noticed Malika declining social invitations she would have eagerly accepted before. Her vibrant social media presence became more sporadic. The high-end woman who had once organized community events was now barely attending them. "It was like watching a flower close up," said a longtime friend. "That's the only way I can describe it. She was just folding in on herself, getting smaller." As Lynch's control tightened, his behavior became more erratic. Minor disagreements escalated into shouting matches. He'd storm out after arguments, only to return with gifts and apologies. This cycle of tension, explosion, and reconciliation became their new normal. The control tactics escalated, checking her phone when she wasn't looking, questioning her about male co-workers, making comments about her clothing being too revealing for a mother. Financial control came next, suggesting they combine accounts to make things easier, questioning her purchases, offering to handle the bills so she wouldn't have to worry. Children often sense danger before adults are willing to acknowledge it, and Jairah was no exception. The once outgoing teenager became quieter when Lynch was around. She stopped inviting friends over to the house, preferring to meet them elsewhere. When asked directly, she would shrug and say Lynch was okay, but her body language told a different story. "My daughter started making excuses not to be home when he was there," Malika confided to a close friend in late 2024. "That was when I really started paying attention. The holidays brought matters to a head." Lynch's jealousy and possessiveness peaked during family gatherings. He sulked when Malika gave attention to others, created tensions where none existed, and on one occasion grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks when she was talking and laughing with a male cousin. That incident, witnessed by several family members, was a turning point. For the first time, Malika could no longer explain away his behavior or believe his apologies. The physical evidence of his control, bruises in the shape of fingerprints, made denial impossible. "She called me that night, crying," her sister recalled. Said she was done, that she'd been making excuses for too long. "I told her to come stay with me, but she said no. Said she wasn't going to let anyone drive her from her own home." Instead, in January 2025, Malika asked Lynch to move his belongings out of her house. The breakup was not clean or simple. Lynch alternated between pleading and threatening, between playing the victim and becoming the aggressor. For weeks he would show up unannounced, sometimes in tears, sometimes in rage. By February, Malika had changed her locks and made it clear to Lynch that their relationship was over for good. She began rebuilding the life he had systematically dismantled, reconnecting with friends, attending community events again, recovering her sense of independence and joy. March brought her 40th birthday, a milestone she celebrated without Lynch. Photos from that day show Malika surrounded by family and close friends, her smile genuine for the first time in months. She posted on social media about new beginnings and reclaiming my happiness. For Lynch, watching this renaissance from the digital sidelines, each post, each photo, each indication that Malika was thriving without him seemed to fuel a smoldering rage. His own social media turned dark. Cryptic posts about betrayal, about what goes around comes around, about people who think they can just discard you. April arrived with Easter celebrations and Jairah's 13th birthday. More family gatherings, more photos of Malika embracing life, more evidence that she had moved on. What Lynch couldn't accept was the simple truth. Malika wasn't missing him at all. She was blooming again, the flower reopening in his absence. As April 2025 progressed, Lynch's behavior reportedly became increasingly concerning to those who knew both him and Malika. Friends later told investigators that he seemed unable to accept that the relationship was truly over. By the morning of April 12th, the situation would escalate to its tragic conclusion. Malika and Jairah would be found dead in their home, and Bahin Lynch would become the primary suspect in their murders. After ending her relationship with Bahin Lynch in March 2025, Malika Whiting embraced her newfound freedom with the same enthusiasm she brought to everything in her life. For a woman who had spent months walking on eggshells, the relief was palpable. To friends and family, who had watched her spark dim during the relationship. March 2025 marked a significant milestone for Malika, her 40th birthday. While many approached this age with trepidation, Malika viewed it as a fresh start, a new chapter worth celebrating. She gathered with close family and friends for a dinner at her favorite restaurant in Trenton, followed by a small gathering at her West State Street home. She was glowing that night, recalled a friend who attended the celebration, kept saying, 40 and finally free. We hadn't seen her that happy in a long time. Photos from that evening showed Malika in a blue dress, surrounded by loved ones, blowing out candles on a cake decorated with the words 40 and fabulous. The images captured a woman embracing her future with optimism and joy, a stark contrast to the guarded, cautious person she'd become during her time with Lynch. While Lynch wasn't physically present at these celebrations, his absence loomed large for those who knew about the difficult breakup. According to family members, Lynch had repeatedly tried to insert himself back into Malika's life, alternating between apologetic pleas and veiled threats. He couldn't stand seeing her happy without him, Malika's sister later told investigators. It was like her joy was a personal insult to him. The celebrations continued into April with Easter Sunday, a holiday Malika always made special for her children. She prepared a traditional dinner, organized an egg hunt in the backyard for the younger children in the family, and took photos of everyone in their Sunday best after church service. It was another family gathering that Lynch was not invited to attend, another reminder that Malika was moving forward without him. Perhaps most significant was Jairah's 13th birthday in early April, her official entrance into the teenage years. For this milestone, Malika pulled out all the stops. She transformed their home with decorations in Jairah's favorite colors, ordered a custom cake featuring characters from her daughter's favorite anime show, and invited Jairah's closest friends for a sleepover party. It was exactly the kind of celebration Malika was known for, thoughtful, personal, and centered entirely on making her child feel special and loved. For Jairah, who had been noticeably more reserved during Malika's relationship with Lynch, the party represented a return to normalcy, to the warm, joy-filled home environment she had grown up in. What these celebrations also represented, however, was a series of events that Lynch was explicitly not welcome to attend. Each photo, each gathering, each moment of happiness without him seemed to fuel his resentment. Neighbors would later report seeing Lynch drive slowly past Malika's house multiple times during the week of Jairah's birthday. On one occasion, he had parked across the street for nearly an hour, just watching the house. When one concerned neighbor approached his vehicle, Lynch drove away without explanation. According to Malika's co-workers at Gabe Academy International School, Lynch had also begun showing up at her workplace unannounced. He would arrive at drop-off time, ostensibly to talk to Malika, but was asked to leave by school administrators who were aware of the situation and concerned for her safety. She had started to get nervous again, said the school director. We made sure someone walked her to her car every evening. We had his picture at the front desk and instructions not to let him in the building. We thought we were being cautious enough. God, I wish we had done more. In the week leading up to April 12th, the tension escalated further. Malika had confided in several friends that Lynch's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. He had left items on her porch, gifts she didn't want, notes she didn't read. He had called repeatedly in the middle of the night, sometimes saying nothing when she answered, sometimes begging for another chance. On April 11th, the day before the tragedy, Malika spoke with her sister about possibly filing for a restraining order. The conversation reflected her growing concern about Lynch's inability to accept the end of their relationship. She told me she was starting to get scared, her sister recalled through tears. Said he wasn't taking no for an answer. I told her to come stay with me for a while, but she didn't want to disrupt Jairah's school routine. She said, "We'll be fine, he'll get tired of this eventually." That same day, Malika reportedly spoke with a co-worker about Lynch, expressing concern about his recent behavior, but also determination not to let him intimidate her back into a relationship. She said, "I'd rather be alone forever than spend one more day walking on eggshells around that man." The co-worker later testified, "Those were some of the last words she ever said to me." The morning of April 12, 2025, began like any ordinary Saturday in the Whiting household. According to neighbors who spoke with investigators, Malika was seen retrieving her newspaper around 8:30 a.m., exchanging friendly waves with a neighbor walking his dog. Jairah had plans to meet friends at the mall later that afternoon. It was a cool, clear spring day in Trenton, the kind that promised summer wasn't far away. Inside the house on West State Street, Malika and Jairah likely went about their morning routines, with no indication that their lives were about to be cut tragically short. Around 10:30 a.m., that ordinary morning turned extraordinary in the worst possible way. Neighbors reported hearing multiple gunshots coming from the Whiting residence, followed by screaming. One neighbor immediately called 911, reporting what they described as a lot of shots, maybe 6 or 7, and a man running from the house. Police arrived within minutes to find the front door ajar. Inside, they would discover the bodies of Malika Whiting and her daughter Jairah Biggs, victims of what would soon be identified as a domestic violence homicide, the final, unforgivable act of control by a man who couldn't accept being left behind. Within minutes of the 911 call reporting gunshots at the Whiting residence, the 300 block of West State Street transformed into a hub of police activity. Squad cars with flashing lights blocked off both ends of the street as officers secured the perimeter. Detectives, forensic technicians, and the medical examiner arrived to begin processing what was clearly a devastating crime scene. Inside the home, investigators documented the terrible scene with methodical precision. Malika had been found on the stairway leading to the 3rd floor, with multiple gunshot wounds. Based on her position, investigators speculated she had been trying to reach her daughter when she was confronted by her killer. Jairah was discovered in her 3rd floor bedroom, also with multiple gunshot wounds. The medical examiner would later determine that both victims had died almost instantly from their injuries. As technicians gathered shell casings and other evidence, detectives interviewed neighbors who reported seeing a man matching Bahin Lynch's description fleeing the scene shortly after the gunshots were heard. One witness described him as walking quickly, not running, from the house, his face expressionless, showing none of the panic one might expect after such violence. It was chilling, the witness later told reporters, like he'd just finished some everyday task, not like he'd just... I can't even say it. It wasn't human, that calmness. By noon, police had issued a bolo be on the lookout alert for Lynch, describing him as armed and dangerous. His photograph was distributed to all law enforcement agencies in the region, and officers began checking locations he was known to frequent, his apartment, workplace, and local establishments he was known to visit. Meanwhile, as news of the shooting spread through the neighborhood, residents gathered behind the police tape, many in tears, struggling to process the violence that had erupted in their peaceful community. The crowd grew as the day progressed, with people bringing flowers, stuffed animals, and candles to create an impromptu memorial. "I just can't believe it," said one woman who identified herself as a parent from Gabe Academy where Malika worked. "She was the gentlest soul. And Jairah, my God, she was just a child. Who does this? Who could do this to them?" By early afternoon, as police continued to secure evidence at the scene, family members began to arrive. Their arrival created some of the most heart-wrenching moments of the day, their grief raw and unfiltered, as the reality of what had happened hit them with full force. As family members received confirmation of the identities of the victims, the scene was heart-wrenching. Malika's relatives collapsed in grief, their anguished cries piercing the somber atmosphere. Among them was Malika's young daughter, too small to fully comprehend the magnitude of what had happened, clutching a family member's hand as adults around her broke down. The image of this small child, who would now grow up without her mother and sister, added another layer of tragedy to an already devastating scene. "You just killed her," one family member was heard saying through tears. "You took the one person that I know that never give up and always told me that she never leave me." Another family member, addressing the absent killer, cried out, "I hope they do you the worst way. That's what your baby dad was saying. I mean your boyfriend. Yeah, I hope they do you the worst way." These expressions of grief, captured by local news cameras, broadcast the family's pain to the wider community, and underscored the human toll of the violence. Within hours, the story had spread across Trenton and beyond, with news outlets beginning to pick up the tragic story of a mother and daughter gunned down in their own home. As the family mourned, law enforcement expanded their search for Lynch. His vehicle, a 2017 grey Honda Accord, was discovered abandoned in a shopping centre parking lot approximately 3 miles from the crime scene, suggesting he had either fled on foot or found alternative transportation. The Mercer County Prosecutor's Office took charge of the case, coordinating efforts between multiple agencies. Given the domestic relationship between Lynch and Malika, and the clear premeditation suggested by the crime scene, prosecutors began preparing to file first-degree murder charges. In the late afternoon, Trenton Mayor W. Reed Gusiora arrived at the scene to offer condolences to the family and address the community's concerns. In a statement to the press, he described the murders as a senseless tragedy and a devastating example of domestic violence at its worst. Today, our city mourns the loss of Malika Whiting and her daughter, Jairah Biggs, the mayor stated. This appears to be a case of domestic violence that has robbed our community of 2 beautiful souls and left a family shattered. I urge everyone to evaluate your relationships. This can happen to anyone. As evening approached, the search for Lynch intensified. Officers executed search warrants at his apartment, where they reportedly found additional ammunition matching the caliber used in the murders. They interviewed associates, checked surveillance footage from businesses near where his car was abandoned, and followed up on numerous tips from the public. The breakthrough came shortly before midnight when an employee at a motel on the outskirts of Trenton recognized Lynch from news reports and alerted authorities. The employee reported that a man matching Lynch's description had checked in around 2 p.m., paying cash and using a different name. Police surrounded the motel, and after confirming Lynch's presence in one of the rooms, a tactical team made entry and apprehended him without incident. According to officers at the scene, Lynch was found lying on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. He offered no resistance and made no statements upon his arrest. A search of the motel room reportedly yielded the murder weapon, a 9mm handgun that Lynch, as a person with a previous felony conviction, was legally prohibited from possessing. Also found were several changes of clothes and a substantial amount of cash, suggesting he may have been planning to flee the area. By the morning of April 13th, Bahin Lynch was in custody at the Mercer County Correction Center. The man who had shattered a family and shocked a community was now behind bars, facing the most serious charges in New Jersey's criminal code. On April 13, 2025, the Mercer County Prosecutor's Office formally announced the charges against Bahin Lynch. The 45-year-old faced 2 counts of first-degree murder, second-degree possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, first-degree unlawful possession of a weapon, and second-degree certain persons not to possess a firearm due to a prior felony conviction. Lynch was detained at the Mercer County Correction Center, with prosecutors successfully arguing that he should remain in custody pending trial. The judge cited the violent nature of the crimes, Lynch's flight attempt, and the overwhelming evidence against him as reasons to deny bail. This case represents the deadly potential of domestic violence, stated the prosecutor during the detention hearing. 2 lives were brutally taken because the defendant couldn't accept rejection. We will pursue justice for Malika Whiting and Jairah Biggs with every resource at our disposal. As the legal process began its slow, methodical journey, the Trenton community rallied to support the surviving family members and honor the memories of Malika and Jairah. Malika's son, Santana Maher, created a GoFundMe campaign to help support his younger siblings and cover funeral expenses. The response was immediate and overwhelming, with donations coming in from across the country. My mother and little sister were everything to us, Maher wrote on the fundraising page. Now we're left to figure out how to move forward without them. My mom was our rock, our foundation. Please help us give them the memorial they deserve. Mayor W. Reed Gusiora, who had spoken at the crime scene on the day of the murders, continued to address the tragedy in public statements, framing it as a call to action on domestic violence. What happened to Malika Whiting and her daughter? Jairah should never happen to anyone, he said during a press conference on domestic violence awareness. We must learn from this tragedy. If you see warning signs in your own relationship or in someone you care about, please reach out for help before it's too late. The impact on Trenton's educational community was profound. At the Trenton Public School District, where 13-year-old Jairah had been a 7th grade student, grief counselors were made available to students and staff. Her classmates created a memorial wall filled with notes, drawings, and photographs celebrating her life. Jairah was a bright light in our school, said her principal in a letter to parents. Her absence leaves a void that cannot be filled. We are committed to supporting our students through this difficult time and honoring Jairah's memory in meaningful ways. At Gabe Academy International School, where Malika had worked as a daycare provider, the staff held a private memorial service. Before returning to work, parents whose children had been in Malika's care brought their little ones to place teddy bears and flowers at an impromptu shrine outside the school. Miss Malika taught my son to tie his shoes, said one parent through tears. It seems like such a small thing, but it wasn't. She had infinite patience. She treated every child like they were her own. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that someone so good is gone? A community-wide prayer vigil held 1 week after the murders drew hundreds of attendees. Religious leaders from various faiths offered prayers for the victims, their family, and the community at large. Candles illuminated the night as speakers called for an end to domestic violence and greater resources for potential victims. Malika and Jairah's deaths must not be in vain, said one pastor, his voice echoing across the silent crowd. Their tragedy must awaken us to the dangers that exist behind closed doors, in homes where fear has replaced love, where control has replaced respect. In the weeks following the murders, domestic violence hotlines in Trenton reported a significant increase in calls, a bittersweet indication that Malika and Jairah's story had prompted others to seek help before it was too late for them. 4. The family left behind. The grief was overwhelming but not isolating. The community embraced them, offering not just financial support but practical assistance, meals delivered, childcare offered, shoulders to cry on. Malika's younger children, including her small daughter who now faced growing up without her mother and sister, were surrounded by a network of support determined to honor Malika by embodying her nurturing spirit. The case against Bahin Lynch continues to move through the legal system. Evidence is being processed, witnesses interviewed, a trial date to be determined. But regardless of the eventual legal outcome, nothing can bring back the loving mother and vibrant young girl whose lives were cut short on that April morning. What remains is their legacy, a community more aware of domestic violence, a family determined to keep their memories alive, and countless lives touched by Malika's generosity and Jairah's youthful promise. In life, they brought joy to those around them. In death, they brought a community together, unified in grief, but also in a commitment to ensure that such a tragedy never happens again.